Not taking away from what you said, Nwakwe, about the fact that we need to have those conversations around Nigeria's economy. How do we fix this economy to empower tomorrow and chart a new vision for Nigeria? Let's get into that conversation, but first, there's this piece by my colleague, Ini Jamekwa.
That's right. We're still in a celebratory mood here in Nigeria. 63 years of independence is a big deal. But even as we celebrate, of course, there are so many reasons to also meditate. Top on that is the economy. Is it from the labor strike that is hanging over our head? Or is it the removal of subsidy, the request for minimum wage, the FX shortage? These are economic issues. But one thing that I know President Bola Tinubu will be remembered for a while, I believe, is the creation of the marine and blue economy, an economy which has been estimated to worth about $1.5 trillion every year, globally, every year. It provides over 30 million jobs and provides a vital source of protein to over 3 billion people. What is Nigeria's share in this? The Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, has estimated untapped blue economy potential is valued at $296 billion. Now, how do we scratch out of this? We have a minister in charge of this. We have there you have him, Mr. Gboyega Oyetola. He's in charge of getting out that $926 billion. How will he handle this? And Mr. Oyetola has a lot to deal with, you know, from the issue of FX shortage to security on the waterways, which has improved in recent times, infrastructure around that, and also the issue of who owns which waterway. These are some of the hurdles that the minister, Mr. Gboyega Oyetola, will have to deal with and find good ways to handle that. Now, there's another sector that is also of interest at this time, is the solid minerals. That's another area of untapped potentials in Nigeria. Nigeria is a country with over 44 different kinds of solid, more than this, I believe, much more than this. And that's according to the Nigerian Extractive Industry and Transparency Initiative. Now, we have a minister right there too, Mr. Dele Alake is the minister. He came up with his own 7-point agenda, which include creation of job, multinational mining, big data on specific 7 priority area. And then one area of interest is the issue of illegal mining. And he gave 30 days of grace for illegal miners to join artisanal cooperatives. It's over 30 days since Mr. Alake made that statement. And, you know, maybe it's too soon to expect results, but he said 30 days, and it's over 30 days. So, of course, Nigerians are looking forward to see what the minister is doing. It's over 30 days. Illegal mining, I believe, has it stopped in Nigeria? Well, I guess the panelists will look into that and give some answers. And then another area which is very, very important, that's food security. Now, President Bola Tinubu declared a state of emergency on the food security situation in the country in July. Since then, well, we've seen inflation since that declaration. We see inflation has gone from 24.46% to 29%. That's food inflation, 29.34% in August. Let me just ask, how much do you spend for your household food items every month now? Can you compare to how much you spent in January? I bet you have a lot to say about that. And then this declaration of the state of emergency that the president has given, what should it consist of? What should it should be more than a pronouncement, you know. Now we have someone who is supposed to lead that plan and implement it. We have the Minister of Agriculture. He's supposed to lead that. There you have it, Mr. Boubacar Kyari. What's he doing now about that declaration of the state of emergency? What should he be doing? I believe a lot of Nigerians know what the problem is. We don't need to rehearse what the problem is. It's how to, and we even know the solution, you know, but how do we implement it? That, I believe, is part of the conversation that we'll be having this night. So in summary, imagine a food secured nation along with an optimally developed solid mineral sector and a blue economy devoid of illegal activities with developed infrastructure. No doubt, that would be a flourishing and a developed economy. And that is what Nigerians are looking forward to. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
Well, you know, that conversation around food security reminds me of what the fellow now being called in some quarters the optimist in chief of Africa.
Right.
Dr. Akinwumi Adesina. You know, that Africa doesn't have any business being food insecure within the next 5 years.
Exactly. We actually have no business, you know, being food insecure. And we don't have any business with a lot of things we're actually dealing with, you know, in Nigeria, from oil to the blue economy. There's so much, you know, potential. But at this time, I'm looking at exploiting all of that potential at this point. How do we start that?
I think I'll go with the word explore, because exploit sounds somewhat. Anyway, don't
explore. explore.
Okay.
And you know, when he talked about, and imagining a country that's, you know, food secure, I actually, for a second there, I just pictured it in my mind. And I actually felt really good. I don't know if you pictured it yourself.
And that sounds to me like vision.
Right.
Because vision is something you have to see, even if you don't have it now. But let's have conversations around all of these with our panelists, two of them with us here. Prince Bambo Ademiluyi is chairman of Auto Gas Committee of NLPGA. Thank you so much for joining us here, sir.
Thank you for bringing me.
As well as Dr. Chinyere Almona, who is Director General of LCCI. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have, you know, joining us via Zoom, we have Mr. Boma Alabi, Chairman, Shipping Lines Association of Nigeria. And we also have in Kano, Jibrin Mohammed, Professor of Soil Science, joining us from our Kano studio. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay, maybe that's a good place to start since we are talking about food security.
Exactly.
Let's go there straight away. Are you as optimistic as Dr. Adesina? And because a good number of people will be wondering, how come we haven't even had that conversation? How any effect, so to speak, since the president declared the food security emergency on food security in the country? Any trajectory that Nigerians may not be aware of? Any optimism, any certainties, any movement in the direction of food security that you can see and tell us about? That's for you, Mr. Mohammed.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good. I said, in the light of what the president said, I mean, before the ministers were put in place and empaneled, the president declared the food security emergency, a state of emergency on food security. And a number of people are wondering, how far so far with that? Is there anything you can tell us, any movement in that direction that you know that Nigerians may not be aware of?
Well, I think the most important movement is to have synergy between the various government agencies and policies. We've had a lot of very good policies, the last one being the National Agricultural Technology and Innovation Policy, which has mapped out various ways to improve food security and boost agriculture. But unfortunately, the lack of synergy between various agencies of government and between the various tiers of governments is preventing realization of many of these laudable policies. So it's too early to talk about the achievements of this government in terms of food security. But I think what they have been trying to do to provide palliatives is in the right direction. However, if you look at the recent statistics from National Bureau of Statistics, the rate of food inflation month on month for the last 3 months has been almost 30%, which means the cost of food to the average Nigerian is becoming very prohibitive. So I think a lot needs to be done. We have huge potentials, but we are not realizing them because we are not working in synergy between different agencies.
And that raises the question, Mr. Mohammed. The fact that synergy is lacking is historic as well. A good number of times the previous administration has had to call on federal agencies to collaborate. Security agencies, federal security agencies to collaborate. So if we're having difficulty with agencies of government collaborating, how then can we facilitate the different tiers of government, the federal and state governments, to collaborate and champion the cause of food security in the country? How do you see that happening?
So that is where I want the government to declare emergency, declare the riot act, and ensure that all the agencies are working together. And I'll give you an example. If you talk of irrigation, for example, it's a critical aspect of agriculture that is required if we are to feed ourselves. And you have different agencies, different ministries that handle various aspects of water management. Ministry of Agriculture with some departments and Ministry of Water Resources. On paper, they are working together, but hardly do they work together. In fact, they will mostly work against each other, and it's the same with many other agencies. So the riot act the government declares should be to bring all these actors together and map out a strategy and provide a kind of a regular timeline where they meet and compare notes and see and track what is going on with respect to the various programs together.
Right,
so there must be that synergy.
Yeah, let me quickly go back to...
Unless this riot act is put in all the agencies of the federal government and also working together with the various tiers, especially the local government. Of course, agriculture is on the concurrent list. Each of the tiers can provide its policies and so on. But if that synergy is not there, then everything we've been talking about will just be a mirage.
A good point that you have raised, Mr. Mohammed, there is no doubt about it. Dr. Amona,
Right.
First of all, let's begin with you here in Lagos. What do you make of that thing that he said? It's a historic challenge that we've had. Lack of synergy between federal agencies, lack of synergy between the different tiers of government. What do you think will be responsible for that?
So it's a historic problem. And I guess if we knew what was responsible, we'll have dealt with it.
So you think we don't know?
I don't know that we know enough to do anything. So he described how you have two different ministries coordinating water. Even within the manufacturing setup, sometimes you have overlaps. So what is SOM regulating and what is NAFDAC regulating? Sometimes there are these overlaps, and I don't know. We talk about the multiplicity of the MDAs. We've been talking about it for a long time. So that's why I say I don't know that we know enough of what the problem is to deal with it. But it needs to be dealt with because, one, it causes confusion with the operators because you don't know whose laws you're supposed to comply with. But also it increases the cost of governance if all of these agencies are doing the same thing. So we need to fix it.
All right, Dr. Amona, definitely food security is something we should definitely look at this time. But let's, bring it down to the economy. Generally, we have a lot of issues, right now. And I'm wondering at 63, can you point out, something that we can cheer about or celebrate in our economy? Can you find something?
I need a torchlight to find something.
Right. I think we should
today,
check.
Because today things are pretty tough.
Are you speaking as a businesswoman or as a Nigerian?
Both. And somebody who oversees a group of people or businesses within the economy. So if I think about it, perhaps just the fact that we've been a democracy since 1999 is something to cheer about. But things are pretty tough with the removal of fuel subsidy and its impact on inflation, with the exchange rate harmonization, which we felt was a good idea because the difference between the official rate and the black market rate was too wide. However, all the other dynamics that will require to put things together they're not working well. So that is causing its own problem. And then there's illiquidity, and with the dollar strengthening, that's the cost of everything, cost of commodity, cost of feeding, cost of housing, cost of everything is rising. So things are pretty difficult for both the ordinary person and the business person. And so it's pretty difficult.
Right, and I did see you, struggling with your torchlight to find, that positive. But, definitely, I can think of some other things, outside the economy. I can think of our music, our entertainment industry.
Creative industry.
That's doing great out there. I want to count blessings at this point, But definitely we have problems, in this economy, and we definitely have to face it. But, in your view, where can we start from? We still have another 60 years to go. Where should we start from?
Or more.
Or more, yeah.
More.
But I'm just
US
saying
is more
first
than
60.
200 years.
Yeah, I'm just saying first 60, next 60.
So leadership is one, and I listened to the president's speech yesterday. He said all the right things. The speech he made in July, he said all the right things as well. My concern has always been, it's nice to say the right things and have the right policies, but execution is always a problem for us. Sometimes we don't have the right people executing, and at other times, it takes so long to execute that the benefit of execution is lost. So I think we have started well. I think he has started well, but the infrastructure that we need to then ensure that we get benefit from all these policy changes, they will need to put in place. Government will need to put those in place. Government will also need to demonstrate a level of transparency in their dealings with the people. Because today, there's a serious trust deficit. It's almost as if the citizens don't trust the government does not trust the citizens. So there's trust deficit, so we need to be saying the right things to the citizens. People are going through very difficult times. Sometimes just the perception that things are tough just makes you a bit more frustrated. So with what government is doing, I will encourage that as they take every step, they should show us. So there should be transparency. You're doing something, let us know what you're doing. Let us know how it's going. If it's not going well, let us know. So sometimes just not knowing adds to the problem.
We need a lot of transparency.
There has to be transparency, there has to be accountability, and there has to be serious communication.
President's speech.
I was going to go
Yes.
ask you, because, I mean, how significant is it for you? We'll come to you, in a bit. How significant is it for you, Dr. Almona, that the president has addressed Nigerians, the national broadcast, thrice in how many months now? Just less than 200 days.
Yes.
How significant is that for you? You mentioned it, one was in May, one was in July, and now in October.
Now, yeah.
How significant is that for you?
The fact that he's speaking, and honestly, when he speaks, he tends to demonstrate a bit of empathy. So he tells you, we are all citizens, we are all Nigerians, we are all in this together. So that kind of says, okay, we are listening to you. However, back to the point, some of the initiatives that are put on the table, we need to ensure that they are even as effective as they should be. So the grants that we want to give to the private sector to enhance production, to improve the productive capacity of most of the manufacturing companies, at the time we said 75, I was wondering, is this enough? Is it ever enough? Okay. So the measures seem to be very tiny compared to the huge problems that we have. But I say, this is the start. What we have said we will do, even if it's 1%, if we start to do it, we will start making progress.
Okay.
One step at a time, I guess.
I wanted to, you are in business, so you always talk about the dollar.
Right.
But,
and the naira.
So when she talked about the dollar, I just remembered that your industry is dollar denominated. Mostly dollar denominated.
That's right.
Even our own crude that we produce here, we sell in dollars.
In dollars.
Right. Maybe we should go to the National Assembly for that one. But let me ask you, one of the things the president said was about CNG, essentially auto gas. But before we go to that specific, can you talk about the entire industry? Ladi speaking earlier talked about the fact that we have a huge resource underground, and a good number of people, even in your industry, are saying it's a terminal product of sorts, and after some time we may not have petroleum anymore. But talk to us about the challenges that we've been confronting in the entire industry and how we can line up action plans that can take us to the future, out of the doldrum we are and into the future. One of the greatest elephants in the room being oil theft.
Talking about oil theft, I have no clue.
I appreciate your honesty.
But the oil industry is very vibrant and can be very, very useful for countries who manage product well. Crude, I mean. Because crude has so many things that you can get from it, and every one of them is dollar. And if you manage those dollars well for your country, then you get a lot of benefits for the common man. One of the problems I see that has not been addressed properly is what Dr. Almona mentioned, infrastructure. Infrastructure is so key in every aspect of life. Moving from one place to the other, production, agriculture, just like the gentleman in Kano said, food security. If you don't have infrastructure to make sure that the food you grow actually can even last, because we grow a lot of food, but we waste a lot of it. So you want to be sure that what you grow actually gets to the table at whatever time of the year. That's the problem with infrastructure. Power is a key aspect of that. And our power source in Nigeria has been mostly hydro, which is not enough, but recently we opened our eyes to gas, and we are not doing enough of that too. So the president's speech about CNG is taking away a whole chunk of power generation source to gas. But again, CNG is not the only source of power, gas power. You have also the LPG, which is more readily even available, because for the CNG you need pipelines that cost a lot of money to build, part of the infrastructure, which we did not pay attention to before. But if we're not going to pay attention to it, it is good, because at the end of the day we'll get CNG, which is very cheap, the cheapest form of source for generating power. But before then, before we get to that stage, we can use LPG. Blends of propane and butane to get our auto gas, which will be slightly cheaper than petrol, or slightly more expensive, of course, than CNG. So generally, our infrastructure blend is what I believe we should sit with and work with. We just suddenly, recently got a gas policy in Nigeria. The energy policy is just 2018, but I don't see much has been done about it. There are several other areas that we can tap from in energy. My good friend talks about hydrogen. We are not even talked about it at all in Nigeria.
But that's interesting, Ladi. I mean, I shouldn't be asking you questions. I wish I could, because the concern for me, you talked about, let's take the high points before we go back to Kano. You have talked about infrastructure. She has talked about one of the issues that you have talked about is leadership challenge, and our guest in Kano talked about lack of synergy among the various agencies of government. So does that lack of synergy also happen in your industry?
Of course it does. Because there are so many agencies fighting to do the same thing. And at the end of the day, nothing gets done. And that is very prevalent. And we must have a situation. The NNPC Limited is a very good development. That policy that changed NNPC from a government-owned thing to a private project. But then we need to move a step further to now run it properly like a business. Let Nigerians own shares there and be able to fire the MD if he's not performing. Not that government will be the one dictating, because the president announced subsidy, and then the next day NLNG Limited went into action. Indeed, would you want to query that? Because that threw the whole country into... But the man is a businessman, and he took that decision based on the fact that he believes he's a businessman. But see where it has turned the country to. So, and I believe it's just because everything has not been structured properly.
Right. So synergy definitely is very important. But before I go to Kano now, we are a big producer of oil and gas, and you keep hearing about fluctuations in oil prices on the global market. and we get jittery, here. And I'm wondering, what's the advantage of being an oil-producing nation or a gas-producing nation, versus a gas or oil purchasing country? What is the advantage, and why are we not seeing it here?
The advantage, of course, is that you can get all the products in country. But where we have found ourselves is that our oil has been grossly mismanaged to the extent that we export our crude to get product back. Who does that? I don't know any country that does that. I don't know any.
Out of the oil producers?
I don't know any.
No OPEC?
I don't know any. Our refineries are down. We can't even... Gas has been flared for so long. It's just recently we woke up to a situation where people are gathering gas for production and getting LNG, CNG, LPG, and using. In fact, we have not even scratched the surface in terms of gas use. There are so many. The gentleman from Kano talked about security, food security. Have we even thought about using gas to preserve our food, to heat food, to cool our fish cold rooms, rather than burn diesel? In Ekpe, for instance, their industry is fishing. You need to see large cold rooms in Ekpe burning gas from the pipeline. There's a pipeline there that's bringing CNG very cheap. But the poor people are still burning diesel and burning petrol so we're not, there's no synergy.
So technically we're behaving like an oil purchasing country.
We're an oil purchasing company.
I told you he's a businessman. Well, Mr. Mohammed, let me come back to you very quickly.
And sell and buy back.
Yeah. Mr. Mohammed, so one of the issues that you mentioned there, apparently, as you have mentioned or you hinted at the other time, almost every sector of our economy is in that direction. You've heard, from Dr. Amana here saying that there's lack of synergy in a number of places, ministries, departments, and agencies, and it's because there is a leadership challenge. You've also heard Prince Salim Louis say the same thing about the auto gas, well, the oil industry itself. So if we are to chart a course, who should be held responsible for that lack of synergy? Here is the reason for the question. You mentioned it the other time that agriculture is on the concurrent list. So the president cannot order the governor in a state. The Minister of Agriculture cannot order the Commissioner of Agriculture in any state. So how do we champion the multi-level or multi-tier coordination that is necessary, especially for the people? Of course, we know that Nigeria doesn't have indigents. Nigeria has citizens, and it is the states that have indigents. So how do we get on the job of harmonizing collaboration?
So first of all, the federal government cannot order the states or the local governments, as you rightly mentioned, but it can provide incentives that will boost agriculture. And I want to give an example of for example, the infrastructure the lady mentioned, the energy the other gentleman mentioned. If you want to develop agriculture, you have to develop industry that will drive agriculture. So we have to add value to the agricultural products we are having. And how do you add value? By getting agro-industries developed in specific areas where raw materials will be easily supplied to these industries. To do that, you need cheap energy. You need infrastructure such as roads. And that is where we got it wrong for a long time. When the colonial people were here, as far back as 1946 or so, they had a program for developing agriculture, and their focus was on export. In fact, as far back as the early 1900s, when they first amalgamated Nigeria, they had a plan for export. That is why they put a railway line from the farthest end of the northern Nigeria to the coast to drive export. They wanted to export hides and skin, so they put a number of veterinary stations and ranches and dipping points so that animal can dip and the skin will be fine. So these are the kind of incentives we need to have the infrastructure, have affordable energy that will drive industry, put all the necessary incentives for us not to export primary goods, but to export processed goods, so that the industry can now drive agriculture at the farmers level. When you have that, even the issue about driving extension and so on will be done by the industry, because they want the farmers to produce what they want to specification. So as long as we don't have that in place, then we are going to continue where we are. There have been some gains, quite all right. For me, I don't need a torchlight to see some of the gains. If you look at where we were 63 years ago at independence, our population was probably less than 40 million people. And at the current population, we are still able to feed a good proportion of the population. So it's because something has been done, but it's not enough. So to have that enough, you need those enabling environments. The enabling environments will come from providing the right incentives, like I mentioned, and also by punishing agencies that don't work within the framework of government policy. So if a government declares right to do this or that, then it should ensure that everybody keys in, which means there should be regular interagency meetings and communication, so that everybody keys into the various policies of the government. So that is what is lacking in previous governments, I think.
Okay.
You don't have much of those interagency collaborations, interagency meetings regularly. And also you don't have that oversight. Some years back during the Obasanjo government, there was a kind of a Minister of Coordinating Economy, and with some ministers working together. And I think that worked for us quite well, in my opinion. We need to go back to that kind of situation.
Okay, let's see. I mean, earlier when you were speaking, you talked about the lack of collaboration within the water resources sector of the country. We have someone join us for that conversation as well. He is the Managing Director, National Inland Waterways Authority. He joins us from our Abuja studio, Chief George Moghalu. Thank you for joining us this morning, Chief. Well, one of the issues that have been identified and elaborated on so far is a lack of collaboration among agencies of government, and the gentleman in Kano identified two agencies of government particularly at the federal level who aren't collaborating, consequently constituting what one can call a clog in the wheel of fixing the economy. If this is something you are aware of, is there a way, is there any explanation for that kind of thing? And how do you think we can get around this so we can empower the nation for tomorrow?
Thank you for having me. Let me begin by saying that I was Managing Director of National Inland Waterways Authority until last Friday, when I finished my first tenure. I needed to put that straight. Like what you said with regards to collaboration, in the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, there's quite, what I say, very clear collaborative relationship between the agencies. I remember that as chief executives, both myself, the MD, the EG of NIMASA, the MD of NPA, the registrar of, director, of MAN-ORON, the registrar of CRFFN, all of us, we have a platform, including the MD of the Nigerian Railways Authority. We have a platform where we meet to look at issues, to look at how we can work together for the benefit of our people. We actually appreciate the fact that we need to collaborate to work. So like the person you said who made that comment, I didn't watch the program, so I wouldn't know what the person may have said, but the truth still remains that we have a very strong collaborative relationship between the agencies of the marine and blue economy.
Right, Dr. Mogale. So, yeah, my colleague earlier talked about the potential with Nigeria's blue economy. And I'm wondering, for you, what are the plans to, improve our waterways to actually, help us be able to gain, from this blue economy? Because the benefits are incredible. So tell me, just give me an overview of what the plan is to actually make this reality for us.
I'd like to begin this intervention by appreciating government for the initiative of creating a ministry for the maritime sector, for the marine and blue economy. It's quite a very strong initiative. It was a kind of answered prayers because we desired, we demanded, we asked for it because we believe very strongly on the potentials that lie in this sector of our economy. And if properly harnessed, the economy has the potentials of contributing very greatly to our national GDP. For the marine and blue economy, like I did say, the potentials are quite enormous. However, in actualizing the set objective, there are things that has to be put in place, addressing the issue of infrastructure deficiency, address the issue of security, address the issue of manpower development. So these are specific issues that government has to put more effort. Government has to address them very aggressively with a clear purpose, with focus, so that we can actualize the desired objective. If you look at infrastructural deficit, there are areas that require, for the blue economy, there's quite a lot of infrastructure that has to be put in place. One of which principally is the issue of dredging and making all our inland waterways, particularly all year round navigable. If you look at our history, as a nation, Nigeria is blessed. We have over 10,000 kilometers of inland waterways in this country. And if, unfortunately, it's only about 3,600 to 3,800 that is all year round navigable. That is to say that they have opened, their channels are open, all year round maintained, so that vessels can ply on them. However, you must also take note of the fact that 28 of our 36 states can be accessed by water once our channels are open. So when you look at that advantage, natural gift we have from nature, if we harness it, if we develop it, if we grow it, I can assure you that there's quite a lot the nation will gain from having those channels clearly open. So when we address the issue of dredging from the Benue down to the Niger, up to the Atlantic, if we open our channels and then all the tributaries, we get everywhere open, I can assure you that the industry will benefit and it will grow. There are areas where new ports have to be developed in the inland waterways, the ones that are being done now, completed, new jetties built at various locations. We need to do that. We need to do quite a lot of river training. We need to lay buoys. We need to remove wrecks because quite a lot of wrecks are on our inland waterways. We also have to address the issue of water hyacinth. We keep removing them. And then again, most importantly, we have to address the issue of security. So far, so good. There's a strong collaborative effort between the agency that is in charge of the inland waterways, that is NIWA. There's a collaborative relationship between NIWA, between the Navy, the NIMASA, the Marine Police. So there's this understanding. We all agree that there is a need to make all our waterways all year round navigable, all year round safe, so that passengers can move from point A to point B. Cargo can be moved from point A to point B. And like I did say last time when I was on, I had this kind of privilege to talk on NTA, I made it very clear that there is quite a lot we can gain. Today, we have made a lot of investment in developing our road infrastructure. But our roads are not designed to carry the weights they are carrying today. Most of the bulk cargo you have all over the world, liquid cargo, most of them are moved either by water or by rail. And in doing this, what you have done is to remove pressure on your roads. Like statistics have shown that a good percentage, over 50-60% of the containers that come into this country, either through Lagos or either through Port Harcourt, all end in the southeast. And what that means is that these cargo are now being moved by road. If, for example, we have 3 million containers going to the southeast, that translates to 6 million trailers being on our roads. 3 million carrying the containers and 3 million carrying the empties back. And in doing this, our roads are not designed to carry this weight. Because by the time we open our waterways and it's all year round navigable, fully functional, what we have successfully done is to remove this cargo from the road and move them to the water. And by that act, we are saving our infrastructure, and the funds we are using to maintain this infrastructure can be diverted and used for other purposes. So there's quite a lot that can be done to grow that industry.
Interesting perspective, Chief Moghalu. But for all of you, on this panel, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to address the future. It was in the 80s that a young lady released a song titled Leaders of Tomorrow. And the old people and what a friend of mine calls dinosaurs in the house will remember that song. Parents, listen to your children. We are the leaders of tomorrow. So let me begin with you, Dr. Amona. In all of the conversations that we're having, it would seem like generally we speak over the heads of the young. In fixing the economy, we're speaking over them. In talking about the blue economy, we seem to be speaking over them. Talking about food security, we tend to be speaking over them because once the young man or young woman hears agriculture, they think of the cutlass and the hoe, and they are not doing that anymore. When we talk about your oil industry as well, we seem to be talking over their heads because they wonder what you guys talking about in these days of technology and all of that. So, in empowering tomorrow, in charting a new vision for Nigeria, how do we get the young people engaged? You would remember that though the man, for instance, who designed the national flag did it at age 23, a good number of people who have led this country were in their 20s when they started. The oldest of them was in his 30s. How do we begin that conversation, that engagement of a solid structural handshake between the present and the future, starting with the young people today?
Okay. That's a great question. I don't think that we entirely speak over their heads, because I believe that they are largely involved in a lot of the economic sectors. So at the Chamber, we have a group which we've called the Young Business Owners Group. And the idea is to see what the young ones are doing and encourage conversations among them that will impact the broader society. And I see people and businesses in different sectors, so I don't think we're entirely talking above their heads. The one way to also bring them even closer is to explore what they have done well. So in the creative sector, for instance, entertainment, Nollywood, the young ones are doing great stuff. So how do we encourage them to do more? We just talked about agriculture. The young ones are in agriculture. They have a lot of tech-enabled agric services and initiatives that they are exploring. We just need to encourage them a bit more so that they can focus on the things that are going to work. The other thing is you can't make everything as young as possible. So if you think about the regulatory framework, it's as old as it will be. But we need to have conversations such that the young ones understand the regulatory framework and how it works and how we can make it easier for them to do business. So a lot of the young ones, their frustration will be, we are thinking about tax. There are multiple taxes. There are multiple agencies asking them for money for this and for that and for that. To register a business is a Herculean task. So we need to see how our regulatory environment can support the young ones by making it simpler and cutting out the red tapes, but also engage in ongoing conversations so that they understand what exists, and then we can see how we work with them. All right.
Thanks for that, Dr. Amona. Let's come to you now, Prince. But I want to have your thoughts too on his question, because at the end of the day, we are a predominantly youthful population. Absolutely. So how do we get the youth involved?
Getting them involved. In NLPGA, for instance, we have student members, and we go to secondary schools, as low as secondary schools, to talk to them on the use of LPG, which is the most available and the most visible gas that everybody knows about. And so we get them to do things tell them what LPG is useful for, starting from the home. In fact, a lot of them tell us stories about how their mom thinks it will explode all the time and all that. And we talk to them and we let them know it does not, and demonstrate to them that it is safe to use in the home, it is safe to use in their cars. We know somebody said, what if the cylinder explodes in the car? We're all dead. No. All my years of involvement with Autogas, I've not heard of one incident of an explosion in a cylinder. And we tell these children all this and get them involved in our exhibitions. We have one coming up with Lagos Chamber of Commerce LPG Group in October. We're inviting schools to come and see the various things that LPG gas can do in your homes, in your car, in your industries, cooling, air conditioners, fridges, and freezers that use gas. So we expose them to this because we got to get them thinking about it
so
and
much,
how to bring
so
it
much. And I don't know about you, Aya, but when I go to the pumps to buy fuel, my heart bleeds, and I cannot wait to be able to use Autogas for my car. I don't know if you use Autogas.
Is it your heart that bleeds or your pocket? Don't answer that question.
Yeah, I won't answer that.
Yeah. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for being a part of this special for Nigeria's independence at 63. Let's go quickly to Professor Mohammed. We're wrapping this up in about 10-15 minutes, but let's speak to tomorrow. As Ladi has emphasized here this evening, have a number of young people with us. And as you very well know, Nigeria has more than 50%, let me just be conservative, more than 50% of Nigerians are young people. Now, Dr. Amona said when we asked her the other time that, look, we have quite a number of young people who are in the agricultural space. You may want to speak to us about that. It's your sector, it's a sector you know well enough. How well would you say, in terms of carrying along the young people, we are doing in that regard, empowering or positioning Nigeria for a better tomorrow in terms of food security, particularly from the perspective of young people? Can you hear me, Prof?
Yes, I can hear you. So
okay.
In recent years, there has been a lot of effort to carry the youth along, and such efforts are all over the country in different agencies, including tertiary institutions like ours. There are so many grants and sensitization programs to bring youth into agriculture. But to do that properly, we have to change the narrative of the ordinary farmer being seen as a subsistence poor person. And it goes back to what I said earlier. We have to make the business of agriculture attractive by linking it properly with industry, by making the production knowledge-based, by bringing industry right to the places where production is taking place, so that you reduce all these wastages, and also you reduce the exportation of primary goods. If you do that, it will attract the youth. Of course, at the moment, both at federal, state, and with donor agencies, there are a number of initiatives that provide incentives for youth to go into agriculture. The other panelists talk about the technology area in which many youth are involved in agriculture, especially in precision agriculture. They're beginning to come into it. But to totally get the youth involved, you need to have a clear plan that provides financing so that they can see it as a business and go into it in total without fear of having losses that cannot be guaranteed by the financial institutions. So you need to have the youth having access to financing, not the rich desktop farmers that presently access most of the incentives and loans that goes to agriculture.
Right. It's interesting that you just talked about desktop farmers.
Connect between the audio and...
Okay, we'll get to it, Prof. Let me quickly go to Abuja. Chief Moghalu, still on the same issue of bringing young people into the various sectors. Because, you know, most times, most young people hear government, the natural adjective or the natural sentiment is that of distrust. And there can be no Nigeria without leadership. And our leadership recruitment system comes through governance. And governance always has to have government officials. So in terms of factoring in young people into Nigeria's future, some people will be wondering whether or not there is a national plan for integrating young people. We have a national youth policy. I doubt is there anyone in the audience, are you aware there is a national youth policy? Okay, I don't know how much you know about that, but we'll come to you to ask some questions. So whether or not those who are aware, Chief Moghalu, are aware that indeed there is a national youth policy that speaks their language is a question. Starting with education, how well would you say we are planning or factoring in the young people into Nigeria's future in terms of education?
I think a lot is being done in that sector, particularly the sector you mentioned about, and that is education. A lot is being done in that sector because, but the important thing here, like some of us advocate, is that the curricula, when it has to do with our schools, have to change. We have to now bring in national consciousness, bring in leadership training. If there's a way we can restructure our educational curricula so that it can accommodate national consciousness, you can accommodate moral training, you can accommodate leadership training and process so that we can get our people and prepare them early so that they can grow in the industry. For example, in the maritime sector, particularly in the Inland Waterways Authority, where as part of our corporate social responsibility, we engage young people, both in schools. We have youth programs, we have quiz competitions, that has to do with the maritime sector that we sponsor, principally through our Lagos office and our Port Harcourt office. We get the youth involved, we bring them on excursion and training. They come and visit us, we go there on advocacy to teach them, to talk with them, to encourage them to look towards the maritime sector. So if every other sector takes this as a responsibility, as part of their principle, as part of their programs, I'm sure we're going to grow in that sector. But as to education, government, I know, has policies. What it requires is for us who are opportuned to be in positions of authority to work very hard to make sure that these policies are fully implemented so that we can get the youth fully involved from the least point so that with time they can get used to it and then play their role as expected of them as young people.
All right, thanks for that, Chief Moghalu. But we do have joining us right there via Zoom, we have Boma Alabi, Chairman, Shipping Lines Association of Nigeria, join us via Zoom. Great to have you join us. We've said a lot, you know, so far. I wouldn't say you're late, but you are here, and we're happy to have you. But we've talked a lot about agriculture, you know, getting the youths involved with, you know, different industries from oil and gas, agriculture, farming, and business, you know, really. Talk to me, Mr. Boma. Tell me, because you're in the shipping, Mrs. Boma Alabi, pardon me there. Talk to me about what your industry is doing to also, you know, get the youths involved and also, you know, try to take advantage of the blue economy, because we did speak about that a lot earlier. So now that you join us, I'd like to get your perspective on that. Hello, Mrs. Boma. Okay, I think
we'll get back to.
We'll get back to. Mrs. Boma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. Did you hear my question?
No, I didn't hear your question. I just heard you say, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah. So I was saying welcome. You know, we've said a lot, you know, already on the show. We've talked about the blue economy, you know, getting youths involved in different industries, you know, in Nigeria, from oil and gas, agriculture, farming, all of that. I'd like to get your perspective on, you know, how we can actually get the youths involved in the blue economy.
Well, thank you very much. First, let me say Happy Independence Day to you.
Happy Independence Day.
Yes, all audience, both present physically and virtually. I think there are huge opportunities in the blue economy, and we haven't even begun to tap that potential. We need manpower from our young people in all aspects of it. Think about the movement of goods, for instance. You need crane operators to lift those containers off the vessels onto the terminals. You need, and that's a skilled occupation, by the way, because you're operating machinery. We need them to secure the vessels, secure our waterways. We need them to man the vessels as crew, and the barges that move the goods when the big vessels come into our ports. We need to go beyond just the logistics of moving goods to harnessing the riches that we have in our ocean. So farming, we think of this only at the agrarian side of things. Nigeria has the best shrimps in the entire world. And we can cultivate, have shrimp farm and export for US dollars. We focus far too much on the oil sector and neglected other aspects of the economy, particularly the economy, which is why I'm so pleased that we have a specific ministry focusing on this, and hopefully more attention will be directed towards that, and in so doing will create more opportunities for our young people who are simply very talented and just need to be guided.
Well, Mrs.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. I really wanted to. Okay, let me ask you, Dr. Amona. I mean, what she just said now about the fact that we've over-focused on one particular sector for too long. Is that to say we in any way, because for as far back as I can remember, since the 60s, we've been having national development plans. And in fact, there was one they call National Development Rolling Plan or something like that. So is it that we abandoned those plans, or those plans were just focused on the petroleum industry?
You know, at the beginning, one of the first things I said was around execution. So sometimes we have these plans and we never really execute or take them to implementation level. I think that's what happens. We create all of these beautiful plans, but we never do anything with it. She's right about the focus on the oil industry. However, even the oil industry, we need to make it a bit more efficient.
Exactly.
So today, when you look at the GDP, the oil industry contracted. And there are several reasons. We talked about oil theft, underinvestment, even cost of production. All these affect the oil industry. So we're not even getting the best out of the oil industry. But then we need to diversify into other sectors that can bring us, that can generate a lot of revenue. So today, the service sector contributes significantly to the GDP. So why can't we focus on the service sector and improve it? We talk about entertainment and creative industry. That's a huge revenue earner. Why don't we develop it? So all the time we talk about all of these nice things, but when we get to the implementation stage, it's all fragmented. Sometimes the issue of the multiplicity of MDAs, everybody trying to do the same thing, that affects it. The other times is the fact that there isn't any level of transparency and openness about what is being done. So we have a plan, but how is that plan supposed to happen? Do we have indicators? Do we have timelines? Do we have milestones? Can we hold people responsible for not doing what they're supposed to do? all those will never happen, and so implementation always fails. So back to the fact that we have some great plans, but execution never happens.
Let me ask you, before we go into the interactive session, and you are probably about the only one in the, on this panel who can speak about the digital economy. Not that others cannot speak about it entirely, but being in the business space, we have latent oil, so to speak, in the technology space as well. The communication and digital economy space is right there, and guess the population that is operating there fully? Young people.
Young people.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, comes back to my question about bringing them in and ensuring that they have their right of place. Thankfully, a minister who is fairly young is right there now, but how significantly do you think that will play in communicating the opportunities and the access to those opportunities to the young?
I think the young ones understand the opportunities, is the access. So how do they get access, and then how do they get the, how are they enabled to do more? And how is the regulatory environment helping them to do more? Because you're right about, you have a lot of young people in that sector, and then that they get it, and they get what needs to be done. But sometimes the environment, constrains them. Some policies don't work for them, or they don't understand it, and so they're not able to do much. So we have a young person at the helm of our fair now, and I think that's a good thing, because he's able to engage with the young ones. He's able to share his vision and and get on with what they're doing. He's also able to understand them, because when you talk about feedback and communication, it's both ways. We need to hear what they're saying, they need to hear what we're saying. So he's able to do that.
And it's quite understandable, because when the young speak, sometimes when they bring ideas, sometimes it sounds crazy. So we need somebody that can actually understand it and translate it.
It's not just what they say, it's how, because there are some lingo they have now. You will not. Okay,
exactly.
Well, he may not be able to understand. I will fairly, maybe I'll Google. Thank you for Google.
Thanks to Google.
But I don't know about you, whether you'll understand.
I will definitely understand.
It's important now for us to take the initiative. You want to bring it in?
Yeah. So we have a vibrant youth right here, a population of youth right here in our audience, and we have our very own Ini John Mekwa. She's going to be taking their questions. We definitely know that there are a lot of questions. It's definitely not easy to be a country that's 63 years old. So we have our very own Ini John Mekwa. She's going to help us get those questions that we know the youths want to ask at this time. Good to have you, Ini, on that side.
Thank you, Ladi and Ayo. Well, I heard you guys talking about seeking age and understanding right there. Well, I don't know if Ayo has to say this every time. But it's a mixture, as we had introduced our audience earlier. So it's now your turn. That's our audience. So, since we're talking about the contribution of the youth, we'll start with Adeniyi. Adeniyi, I know you do have a question you had indicated earlier. Could you share your question?
Okay, thank you very much. I am Sodiq Adeniyi from Lagos State University, and I'm an environmentalist, a sociology student. From the discussion we were having earlier, the other speaker spoken about maritime. But when we look at it, we talk about blue economy. What about the marine conservation life? It's another industry whereby we can make money, economy can come into the country. What are the preparation of the government when it comes to the life of the sea? I mean, the fishes, the fishing, and every other thing. At the same time, when we look at those places, we have a certain problem there, which means waste. Lagos, as a case study, when we look at Lagos, most of our seas and oceans are affected by waste coming from different areas, which means it's killing the economy that's supposed to be coming from that area. And at the same time, we look into the agricultural sector, we look at the renewable energy. We were talking about crude earlier, now moving to gas. But I think we have a problem in Nigeria that when we focus on one sector, we stick to it. We don't utilize every other ways. If you look at crude is not going down. Now we're going to gas. What if gas has a problem? They want to start looking for another solution. Why don't we employ other things around? We look at renewable energy, we look at the sun, the wind vane, we look at the Sahara Desert and every other thing. I think, what are the plans in Ghana? That's my question.
Well, you may want to tell us who you are directing the question to, but it sounds like the very first one.
Who are you directing it to?
I'll direct the World Agriculture to and then
We have the professor of soil science in Kano. Perhaps that's where you want to direct your agriculture.
the other one for
the blue economy. Okay, I guess that's Mrs. Boma Alabi.
No, Chief Moghalu in
Chief
in
Moghalu.
Abuja.
Oh, Chief Moghalu. Okay,
Right.
all right. So we have that. So I'll just take all the questions. And well, it sounds like Adeni is an environmentalist. It brings
yes.
that into perspective. Well, let's also have Princess Layo. I wonder where she'll be coming from, her perspective at this time.
Thank you very much. Mine is not of a question, but a comment. If we really look at it, the youths, they are really trying, but we don't have to demoralize them. Why I'm saying we don't have to demoralize them is that it seems that career politicians, when somebody is not doing well in this ministry, they just, when there is a lot of noise, they move him from that, him or her from that ministry and put that person in another ministry. I think we are tired of being used. We need to move this economy forward. I have ETLS certificates, but I've never exported once. And why? Because of the problems in that corridor. And it's cheaper to send this center table to Germany rather than sending it to Ghana here. So we need to look into that area. I'm not an expert when it comes to that. Maybe they have to give shipping companies incentives to ply that corridor. Because now we have signed AFCTA, Nigeria has signed, we claim to be the giant of Africa. We need to remain that giant. Or else all other small, with due respect to other smaller countries in the ECOWAS, they are going to take over. So now that we have signed AFCTA, we need to sit down. We need to really think about it. How will this center table get to Ghana cheaper? How will this chair get to Ivory Coast cheaper? It's becoming something that is shocky, and manufacturing is the bedrock of every economy. You need to encourage us as manufacturers so that Nigerians will have the guts to continue in manufacturing. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. Sounds like that wasn't a question, just observation and comment.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So we also have a question from Mr. Nimi. We're talking about AFCFTA. I mean, it's a big deal now in Africa, and we know of PAPS, and all of that. But Nigeria seems to be going really slow, and we have to sustain our place as the giant. I know that Dr. Almona will have a lot to say about that. But Mr. Nimi.
Good evening. The name is Nimi Amakri, and I'd like to direct my questions to Prince Ademiluyi and Dr. Almona. I had a lot of questions and comments, but I just stick to the fact that empowering tomorrow means addressing and empowering the youth to take over tomorrow. So I belong to a group, and what we do is to teach. When the convener of that group, what it does is to prepare young business people how to pitch their business to get more funds. And then we have a group of us that are mentors. We mentor them, we talk to them, and hold them by the hand and walk them through a process. Okay? In other words, we help in empowering them. How can the chamber adopt that template? Okay? And in the area of autogas, there needs to be an acceleration. So NPLGA needs to do a lot more in interfacing with governments. And I think the most, so far, one of the most forward-looking is Lagos State government. Because I had a meeting with one of the agencies, and they mentioned interfacing, looking to the NLP for bringing out policies that will guide our sector properly. So,
all right, thank you so much. A final one just before we hand over. We have Ololade.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. My question is directly to you, sir. Daddy, I want to ask that you talked about the refinery the other time. So I want to ask, how feasible is it that our refinery will work and it will work well efficiently? That will not be a kind of a manufacturing, it will not be a kind of a receiving economy, that we are going to be exporting exporting our own crude oil, but how do I put it now? So the importation, you understand, the importation of our own refined oil will be stopped.
And maybe export all our refined products.
Yes.
Right.
All right, so I guess your hands are full. That's how much you can take for this segment.
Okay, so maybe we should just begin with that one, the last on the rear.
Refineries. I've lost hope.
Even when the president has made, the federal government has made a promise?
Well, every president has made a promise that I can remember since I entered the industry about 25, 30 years ago. The refineries worked up till maybe 1989, 90 to about 92, 93. After the turnaround maintenance that was done in that period, the refineries started going down, and they have never really come back. And I don't see them coming back.
Why is that?
Those equipment are obsolete. Technology is moving every day. Some of those things they can't even find the parts to even bring them back to full steam. The money that has been spent on turnaround maintenance of our refineries in the last 20 years could have built us at least 5 or 6 refineries. But somehow, every government gets to believe that they can get it right, but none has had. And for me, if I become president of this country today, I will shut down all those refineries, and if anybody wants to buy, people have even offered to buy. Why don't you just sell them to them?
Okay. Well, madam, you heard the question of Mr. Nimi the other time. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, of course. So what he described, I belong to a group of angel investors, and this is similar to what is being done. The chamber can definitely support. I think also that if, let's say, your team or similar teams have already prepared entrepreneurs, you can have a conversation with us so we can see if there are ways that we can help kind of expose them to funding sources. So that will help to attract the youth and encourage them to go into business, viable businesses.
Right. Then we have the question for Mr. Moghalu.
Yes.
We did get that question. Mr. Moghalu, can you respond to the question about protecting marine life? Marine conservation. Exactly. Can you respond to that question, please?
I heard the question. It has to do with environmental issues. For us in the National Inland Waterways, this is one area that we lay great emphasis on, ensuring that our environment is fully taken care of for the safety of marine life, because it's part of our program with regards to developing the blue economy. One area is that we have upped the ante when it has to do with sensitization, getting our people to understand. And when I was speaking earlier, I told you the effort we've made with regards to making sure that all our navigable waterways are cleared of wrecks, cleared of water hyacinths and whatever impediment you may find on the waterways. We have consistently done this. And we believe very strongly that if you don't deal with these issues, particularly refuse management, okay, we have upped the ante with regards to getting our people to understand how refuse will be managed. Because we found ourselves in a situation where people dump refuse on waterways, believing that the water will carry them. At the end of the day, they end up polluting our waterways. We also have penalties for people who pollute the waterways, people who bring in products that are not acceptable and put them on the waterways. So effort is being made with regards to that, and we have upped the ante. We have increased our operational modalities. We have also laid emphasis on the operations of all inland waterway users, so that we become fully conscious of protecting the lives of the maritime, the maritime lives. We're very conscious of that fact, and effort is being made to ensure that we protect our environment.
And Chief Morley, you did mention about the issue of water hyacinth. I've actually experienced that before. I've seen, how much they can actually be, on the waters. Is there some kind of technology that's, being worked on that can actually tackle that issue?
Yes, we have opened a discussion with a private sector player that wants to help us with clearing water hyacinths and then converting them into raffia, which they're going to use in producing various other items. We're talking with them, and we have reached almost a conclusion point where they are going to now do the experimentation. Don't forget that this is a weed that grows seasonally. If you finish removing them this year, by the time the season comes next year, they will still grow back again. So it's something that we do on a continuous basis. I recall very clearly that from the day I became MD of National Inland Waterways Authority in 2019, every year consistently we have procured water hyacinth clearing as part of our specified agenda to make sure that the waterways are all year round navigable. So we clear it every year, and it keeps happening. And we realize that the only way out is to find how we can use this water hyacinth to put them to effective use. And there are some private sector players, we have engaged them, and we are talking.
I guess if you can't beat them, use them, I guess.
Exactly.
Right.
And talking about using, that conversation takes us to Professor Mohammed in Abuja studio. You heard the question of the environmentalists also, and I think it's something that Dr. Almona also mentioned, and Prince Ademiluyi here, about wastages that we have to experience almost, if not on a yearly basis, between 1/3 and half of agricultural produce in the country seem to be destroyed. They don't get to the markets, and we literally waste them. Is there a way to reverse that trend? Something we haven't tapped into yet?
Yeah, it's a sad situation for a country that is food deficit and is having a lot of food it produces getting wasted. But there are ways we can address that. And again, it needs to go into investment into youth and entrepreneurship, in my opinion. Because these youth have a lot of ideas of producing things that will convert the waste. And also agricultural waste can be converted to wealth through some of the very good ideas some of these youth are coming up with. Recently, in the center I'm heading, Center for Dryland Agriculture in Bayero University, we organized an agri-pitching to get good ideas from youth for some financial support. And we got more than 90 entries with very, very great ideas. We selected 3 of them for some small funding. So I think that is the way to go. We need to invest in youth who have knowledge, who have good understanding of technology that can reverse some of these wastages, some of these trends we're having. Well, I will be very happy to collaborate with the lady who is working with the angel investors, and also with Mr. Nee, to see how we can onboard a number of youth who have ideas to invest in agriculture and address some of these issues of wastages.
Well, I guess they'll have to increase the population of the angel investors because they may be overwhelmed.
Let's not forget the question about AFCFTA.
We'll come back. We'll come to that, and that will be for Dr. Almona. But still with you, Prof. There's something you said earlier about the need to tweak the agricultural education curriculum is quite significant. I've had the privilege of speaking with a some lecturer in a university in the southwest of Nigeria who said, no, most young people don't want to sit in an agricultural class talking about hoes and cutlasses. So there needs to be a way to speak to them, particularly in the value-adding sector of the agricultural industry in the country. In terms of agricultural education, what is missing that needs to be expedited so that what the young man here said about value addition to some of these things can actually see the light of day, and we don't just lose the investments we would have gained when we export raw materials?
Yeah, what is missing is what a lot of institutions are now beginning to realize. that is not only theory in the class, but present opportunities and provide some funding for youth to go into agriculture, to go into processing, to go into marketing. I mentioned earlier that we need to stop exporting primary products. We need to add value to our products. That will help us to even limit importation of so many things that we don't need. I mean, how do we keep importing things like cashew nuts and so on when we can produce and process here? How do we import things like tomato puree and so on? At the same time, at certain times of the year, more than half of the tomato we produce is wasted. It gets rotten. So we need to educate youth to see the opportunities, to bring creative ideas that can preserve and add value to some of these agricultural products. These are some of the things I think a lot of educational institutions are now realizing. For us in Bayero University, for example, through the World Bank funded Africa Centers of Excellence, we are putting a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship and innovation education. And I think that is the way to go, not only for agriculture, but for other disciplines. If we are to boost our economy in Nigeria, we need to promote entrepreneurial and innovative education in our youth. And when I say entrepreneurship education, it's not what was done in the past, where you see government sending sewing machines and so on to universities. I mean, that is not entrepreneurship. Challenge them to use their ideas to solve existing problems that will address our development issues within the agricultural sector. And I think some institutions at least are developing curricula along that line and practically going along that direction.
All right, thanks for that, Professor Jibrin. But regarding the AFCFTA question, Africa trading with Africa, that conversation, that has been on for the longest time now, but we don't seem to be seeing that, happening at this time. And when we produce, how can we get, those products to our African brothers at a good price where we can actually make profit and they can also, gain utility? You can answer that.
So for the AFCFTA, it's a great idea and it opens up a market that is as huge as we can even explore. However, there are challenges. So one which you mentioned, we have infrastructural challenges which we've talked about today. Some of the things that we need to move should be moved by rail between these countries that are close by each other. However, it's difficult. Even having airlines that go from one country to another is a challenge sometimes. So if movement is curtailed, then products can't move, or it will be more expensive for products to move. In addition to that, it's important for us to have a harmonized standards. So for instance, if something is stamped SON and NAFDAC approved here, you shouldn't go to Ghana and go through another process, and then go to Kenya and go through another process. So you should have standardized such that if it goes through Nigeria, it should be fine across Africa. That we haven't done. We've also been working on the rule of origin protocols, which I understand has been completed, but it needs to be sensitized and moved out. Payment is a big issue. So she mentioned that we have PABs. That hasn't really taken off from here in Nigeria. So you really can't sell here and then get your payment coming through. So those things need to be worked out before FCFTA can work. But it's a great idea, but back to execution, we need to make sure that the infrastructure around it works.
Keyword, execution, execution, execution.
Yeah.
I'll come to you, Prince Bambo. What's your contribution to that?
Virtually the same, because I'm president of Nigeria-Ghana Business Council, and that is exactly the bane of what we face. People want to move their products from Nigeria to Ghana, and they can't. Vice versa. Last trade fair, Lagos Trade Fair, they couldn't move across the border, so the people from Ghana had to go back because of the various rules that just stop them. And here we are, here is Ghana, here is Togo, here is... if we cannot do business together, so what are we doing?
So close yet so far.
So close yet so far. I mean, so it's really something that Lagos Chambers of Commerce, and I know, has been working a lot at, but we need a lot of government interaction between the various countries to break those barriers that are impacting on flow.
Sounds to me that you both of you are saying that the AFCFTA is on life support.
It's not on life support. It's actually very active, and it's challenging these issues.
Okay.
Yeah, but we need government support, various governments, just like they said, just like Dr.
If governments are not collaborating, or rather facilitating the activation of the AFCFTA, what can the private sector do?
I wonder.
So you still agree it is not on life support?
It is not on life support. It is not on life support.
Well, we've seen some trades happen already.
It's not on life support.
It's very slow, and it
could be moved faster.
Empowered to move faster.
The life support is being offered by the private sector, and government is keeping it on the bed. Anyway, but to an issue that I want to ask you, Prince, the other time we talked about the dollar. It sounded a little jocular, but it's a little concerning for a number of people that certain products are denominated in the dollar, one of which is the oil. And I produce oil in my house, and I want to sell it to madam, and she has her own currency with which she wants to buy my product. I'm trying to, simplify so that young people can, generally people can understand, how can I be producing oil in my house, in my backyard, and I can't sell it in Naira? Help us understand how that works. Because the dollar is now 1,000 Naira a piece. So what I produce at home, I have to sell it at a cost to myself. That's the way it is sounding to a number of people. Help us understand how that works. Why can the oil in Nigeria, crude oil that is produced in Nigeria in millions of barrels, I dare say, I'm sorry, I know it's your space. How can I not be able to sell it in my own currency?
And get some demand for the Naira?
Because crude is an internationally recognized commodity.
Produced in my backyard.
Produced all over the world. Your backyard being one of the places where it is produced. And you must have a balance in the pricing worldwide. And there are groups you have the OPEC, you have several other groups that are regulating the price of goods, indeed to save economies of the various countries that are producing. So if everybody sells at his own price, at his own will, then you will find out that that product may eventually, on the long run, kill itself. You will not get the kind of benefit from owning that product that you should get. Otherwise, if you are not trading in that international market pricing platform.
But I guess we don't have any problem, taking dollars, for our oil at this point. We want more dollars at this point.
But the fact of the case is that how you then use the dollar you earn is another issue.
Right. And we've seen some countries, some oil producers at this point actually doing swaps with themselves.
Of course.
At this time. So we're seeing some gradual movement, away from the dollar.
There are swaps, but again, there are reasons where the swaps are there. There are very strong reasons, economic reasons. And those countries know why they are doing it, and they are serious about the benefits. But it is different from when you have a situation in our country where we have an increase in crude price and we have the savings and then it's shared.
Well, it sounds to me like you're saying that the federal government themselves have some work to do.
They have plenty of work to do
in that space.
So much, And we're still just hopeful that the new government will have a look at that and see how crude income gets used for things that are useful to the common man.
And we start step by step, but we must move in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, we have to thank you all for being here this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Beg your pardon.
This evening.
I said
right.
it. I said it.
I think we're still in the morning.
No. You do business morning. I do sunrise day. So, Prince Bambo Ademiluyi, Chairman, Autogas Committee NLPGA, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Dr. Chinyere Almona, Director General, SCCI, thank you so much for being here this evening. Professor Jibrin, Professor of Soil Science, joined us from Kano studio. Thank you so much for your time. We've had also Chief George Moghalu, Managing Director, National Inland Waterways Authority. We appreciate your time this evening, as well as Mrs. Boma Alabi, Chairman, Shipping Lines Association of Nigeria. We thank you all for being here with us this evening. This program continues in a bit. To stay with us.